champions, and welcome back to this Thursday edition of our science lesson. For today, we are diving into Chapter 4 of Unit 3, the functions of plants. So on Tuesday, we talked about the functions of animals and how certain organ systems, organs, tissues, and cells all combine in animals to help those animals survive. Well, plants are living organisms just like animals and have cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems that all work together for the plants to grow and to reproduce and to, well, they don't necessarily have behavior, but we'll get into some of the similarities between our plants and our animals diving into this chapter. So I don't have vocabulary on this page, however, my eyes are drawn straight to our big question, what we want to think about as we're reading. So our big question today is, how do some plant structures function? We're not talking about all the plant functions or structures and how they function. You can take organic biology, learning about plants in college and high school, and it gets really in depth into certain processes that plants undergo in order to survive. Today we're just going over a general information about plants and some of their structures and how they function. So without further ado, we are on Chapter 4, Functions in Plants. In the last chapter, we learned that an animal structure works together to perform certain functions. The organs and organ systems of animals support processes that are necessary for survival. Plants also have structures that work together to keep themselves alive. Types of plants can look very different from one another, but many plants share necessary structures in common, such as roots, stems, and leaves. These kinds of plant structures support life processes that ensure a plant grows and reproduces. Much like we want animals to grow and reproduce, plants want to grow and reproduce as well. Plants do not exhibit behaviors in the same way as animals do. However, plants do respond to what is happening in the environment around them. For example, a plant will wilt when it does not get enough water. Leaves on certain kinds of trees change color in the fall, and the leaves may fall off in winter. So here we have a picture of some redwood pines. Specialized structures of these redwood trees allow them to grow into the world's tallest plants. The trunk of a large redwood must support its heavy weight. Vast networks of roots help to keep these massive trees from falling over. Plant structures support growth. Well, animal structures support their growth too. Everything is trying to grow to be bigger and stronger, whether it's a plant or an animal. If it's living, it wants to thrive and survive, to grow to be bigger, stronger, smarter, and to survive, to live long enough that it becomes an adult, can pass along its genes through reproduction, and so forth. So plant structures support growth. Plant structures, such as leaves and roots, have functions that allow plants to meet their needs. Systems of structures in plants' bodies help them. For example, leaves can absorb sunlight and use its energy to make food. Roots can take in water from the soil. Inside the stems, it moves water from the roots to other parts of the plant, and its leaves again exchange gases with the surrounding air. So here we have a structure of this young plant provides what it needs to grow into an adult. We've got green leaves, we've got a strong stem, and under the ground, what we can't see is its roots all working together to help it thrive and survive. Different types of plants have different kinds of structures. For example, some plants have thorns or bristles to protect them from being eaten, such as the sharp spines of cacti. We live in Arizona. We're very familiar with cactuses or cacti, and how if you touch them, they hurt. They got spines to protect them. Most animals don't eat cacti because they don't want to get stuck in the spines. The Venus flytrap, on the other hand, looks nothing like a cactus plant. It grows in a very different kind of climate, and it has unique features, including a spiny leaf that closes around insects to digest them. This helps it get some nutrients that it needs. So cacti are like, hey, animals, stay away from me. I'm very spiny, and I will hurt you, so don't hurt me. Venus flytrap is like, hey, little fly, hey, oh, look, I look good, you're going to land, and Venus flytrap snaps open and digests that fly. Venus flytraps are carnivorous plants. They eat meat or protein. Bugs, but still protein. Okay? So, inside the leaves of plants are structures that absorb energy from sunlight. These structures carry out a chemical process that supports the plant's survival. This process uses the energy of sunlight to make food for that plant. Some plants need a lot of sunlight to survive. Other plants need less light, but all plants have structures that help to use sunlight to stay alive. Did you know that plants breathe? But they don't breathe like animals. They don't have lungs or gills. They have their own process. Plants do not have lungs. Instead, they have tiny holes in their leaves. These holes allow air to enter the leaves. Gases in the air that enter the plant help the plants to make food too. As a result of the chemical process, plants release oxygen and water vapor through the holes in their leaves. Plants cannot survive without this exchange of gases with the air around them. So just like we breathe in oxygen and produce carbon dioxide, the plants take in carbon dioxide and they spit back out oxygen. Very mutually beneficial symbiotic relationship that us as humans and other animals have with plants to provide us with the air that we need to survive. Okay? So here we have a microscopic look. These are plant cells. Each of these is a plant cell. And it shows all these little green blobs of chlorophyll in each cell. And these are tiny, microscopic. On the tip of my pen, you'd have like hundreds of tiny plant cells all working together to build up whatever plant I had there. So the cells are tiny. We can't see them with our own eye. We need high-powered microscopes to see them. Okay? Plant structures support responses to the environment. Well, that doesn't say behavior. We know that plant structures help them grow, just like animal structures help animals grow. But response to the environment. Well, look here, there's a vocabulary term. And vocabulary term means, hey, we're going to look, we're going to examine this before we examine the rest. Our vocabulary term is a response, is a reaction to some factor or condition. Okay, so a reaction. Well, we as Paideia scholars who try our best to be proactive, we know what a reactive person looks like, but what does a reactive plant look like? Well, let's dive a little deeper. Plants can have a response to their environment. A plant may not have enough light or water to grow, so plants cannot move from place to place like some animals. Instead, they respond in ways that help them to get what they need to grow. Certain kinds of plants can even move their leaves and flowers to get what they need or to protect themselves from harm. If you're familiar with sunflowers, Mr. Chambers' favorite type of flower, the sunflower moves throughout the day tracking the sun. It tries to face its face and all of its yellow leaves towards the sun. And then at night, when the sun sets, and if it's not a full moon, which could still trigger a response in a sunflower, the sunflowers will turn and look at other sunflowers. It's pretty awesome. Plants are magical, just as magical as humans, and we can study them with biology, with this study of science of life. Okay? So suppose a plant needs more light. Its stem may bend to face the sun. Some plants can turn so that they face the sun as it moves across the sky during a single day. Other plants slowly grow in the direction of available light. Many plants' roots grow downward because the plant responds to the pull of gravity. This growth sends the plant's roots in the directions where water is likely to be reached. And so many plants have their roots go deep down into the earth to try to catch whatever water's buried down in there. Here in Arizona, a lot of our plants, especially cactuses, instead of diving way down, their roots spread out very shallow under the surface so that on a rainstorm, they're not hoping that it dives all the way down. They want to catch that water as soon as it drops down onto the surface. Okay? But they all adapt differently for their survival. They adapt. We talked about this with One Day in the Desert, but now we're talking about it with plants and animals and how everything is trying to survive, trying to thrive and grow to be bigger and stronger and to stay alive. Plant growth and responses support survival. We have forest fires and floods and insects and disease that can affect a plant's survival. But unlike animals, plants cannot move to a new place to live. Plants, however, have structures and responses that help them survive very harmful conditions. In this way, plants can continue to grow and to mature. Look at the picture of this redwood tree. Redwood trees grow in areas where insects, disease, and fire kill many other trees. Just look at California this year and the last 5-10 years. They've had some very serious wildfires. Arizona's not any better. We've had a lot of forest fires. The whole southern west coast, southwest of Arizona, or the United States, has been in a severe drought for decades. We need more rain, but that's a climate thing, not a weather thing. But regardless, these trees have systems in place to protect them from wildfires. Redwood trees grow in areas where there's insects, disease, and fire. Yet redwood trees survive many harsh conditions. Like all trees, redwoods have bark. However, the bark of a redwood tree helps it to resist insects and disease, much like your skin helps you protect yourself from disease. And if you ever get a boo-boo, you wash your hands real good and you get a Band-Aid on it, so until you get a scab that goes over and can protect you from any germs entering. Well, as the tree matures, its bark grows thicker. The thick bark on older redwood trees can even protect it from some fires. So redwoods are fascinating. They're thousands of years old. They've been here and have lived in that one place longer than anybody has. Thousands of years. You can go to the redwood forest and they have a marker of a tree stump of a fallen redwood, and you can count the lines, and they can tell you, hey, this line here is Civil War. This line back here is when Julius Caesar was in charge of Rome, and even beyond that. But the older they get, the thicker their bark is, and that thick bark can protect them from some fires. Okay? Plant structures support reproduction. Well, animal structures help support their reproduction. The animals are reproducing, the plants are reproducing. It's all about growing up bigger and bigger and hoping that that your genes are passed on and your species survives to make younger offspring. Plants that survive long enough to mature into adults can reproduce, a lot like animals. Remember that when organisms reproduce, they are able to make new individuals of the same type. Plants have male and female structures that aid in reproduction. Pine trees have cones, and male cones release a material called pollen that plants need to reproduce. Female cones on the same tree receive the pollen. When this happens, a seed forms on the cone. A new pine tree can grow from the seed after it drops to the ground, unless squirrels have gotten to it or your dog. But the more pine cones it produces, the more likely it's going to produce a pine cone or a pine tree. Many plants reproduce with flowers. Flowers are structures that often attract pollinators, such as insects and birds, which move pollen from one plant to another. In some cases, flower structures expose the pollen to the wind or rain, which helps move it to new areas where it can grow into new plants, or to really make it miserable for anybody who has seasonal allergies, especially March and October when the plants are pollinating or leaves are falling. Here's a pollinator pollinating a plant. Look closely, we can see that the yellow pollen on the bee's legs that is collected as it moved from flower to flower. Without pollinating bees, such as this one, certain kinds of plants would not be able to reproduce. A lot of plants would not be able to reproduce without bees, but that is a story for another time. We are at the end of chapter 4, the functions of plants. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I know I went on some tangents, but hopefully these are helping us to make connections in our brain to understand the biology of the world around us. You've got 5 to 10 questions to answer on Google Classroom. Stay awesome, and I will talk to you real soon.